Germany to surrender was not based on self-determination at all. Alsace-Lorraine, where 95% of this population of over 2 million spoke German as their mother language, was given to France without a plebiscite. The Sudetenland was granted to the newly created Czechoslovak state, giving 3.5 million German speakers to the new state, persons who had no desire to belong to Czechoslovakia. On March 4th, 1919, Sudeten Germans peacefully demonstrated in favor of remaining part of Austria. On Czech government orders, Czech military shot at the unarmed demonstrators. The crashing of hand grenades, accompanied by the salvos of gunfire and screams of those mortally wounded. 54 dead and hundreds of injured remained lying in the streets. Among the places where this happened were Arnau, Aussig, Eger, Kaden, Mies, Karlsbad, Sternberg, and Freudenthal. The 54 dead included 20 women and girls, an 80-year-old man, big threat to the Czech state, one youth of 16, one of 13, and one only 11 years old. This bloody event that ought to have shaken the world to its foundations remained without any publication in the West, or virtually no publication in the West. And to this day, if you look it up on an English language Wikipedia or something like that, you basically don't find anything about the massacre. Poland, which had not existed for more than 100 years, was rightfully resurrected after World War I. But her borders were drawn in a way to cause the new state to have permanent problems with Germany. In areas of mixed population, plebiscites were to be held, which was at least better than the situation in Alsace or in the Sudetenland. But the rules of the plebiscites were strange. If Poland received 51% of the votes in an area, the entire area was ceded to Poland. If Germany received even up to 99% of the votes in an area, the 1% that voted for Poland was sliced off and given to Poland. This led to some 2 million Germans becoming what have been referred to as orphans of Versailles and becoming Polish citizens against their will. The city of Danzig, about 95% German, was made into a free city, although no one there wanted to be free. They wanted to be part of Germany. The period of the Weimar Republic saw Germany stripped of its ability to defend itself and subject to the whims of her neighbors. Austria, whose first act as a democracy was to declare itself to be an integral part of Germany under the name of Deutsche Österreich, was forced to change its name to simply Austria and forbidden from unifying with Germany. German-speaking West Hungary was only allowed to join Austria in 1921 after a very corrupt referendum, which, due to voting irregularities, led to Ödenburg, today known as Sopron, and Pressburg, today known as Bratislava, being given to Hungary and Czechoslovakia, respectively. South Tyrol was given to Italy without a plebiscite. All this was done with the intent to decrease the number of Germans. In the words of Georges Clemenceau, there are 20 million Germans too many. He wanted to cut down that number, and he certainly did his part. The post-World War I period saw intense Frankification in Alsace, repression of the German minority in Poland, which led to about 1 million ethnic Germans, 1/2 of the total ethnic German population, to emigrate from Poland between 1918 and 1938, and hundreds of complaints being filed with the League of Nations. The same was true of Czechoslovakia, where Germans were subjected to arbitrary rules. Minority laws, passed to protect the Germans, Hungarians, and Poles, were applied in such a way as to discriminate against them. Discontent grew in all the areas which had been torn from Germany. In 1938, Lord Runciman, a British nobleman charged with reporting on conditions in Czechoslovakia, wrote, "It is a hard thing to be ruled by an alien race. And I have been left with the impression that the Czechoslovak rule in the Sudeten area for the last 20 years, though not actually oppressive and certainly not terroristic, has been marked by tactlessness, lack of understanding, petty intolerance, and discrimination to the point where the resentment of the German population was inevitably moving in the direction of revolt. Based on his recommendations, the Sudetenland was unified with Greater Germany in 1938. World War II started over German-speaking sections of Poland. Hitler, after his bloodless incorporation of Austria and the Sudetenland, felt that he could pull the same thing off with Western Poland. He miscalculated and World War II began. Although his attack on Poland cannot be justified, we should not forget that in the first days of the war, some 5,000 ethnic Germans were massacred by the Poles, and that these massacres were later used by the Nazis as justification for their own brutal treatment of Polish civilians. The war against the Hitlerian Reich was justified on many levels. However, what once again became a war on German culture during and after the war was not. Germans were once again interned in large numbers in Britain, Canada, Australia, and many countries allied with Britain. In the United States, starting in 1938, 3 years before we entered the war, the FBI developed a list of German Americans it considered suspicious. It did the same with Germans in South American countries. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, but before Germany and the U.S. were at war, German Americans were picked up and interned. Eventually, as many as 30,000 may have been interned in U.S. camps, and some camps that housed the same camps that housed 120,000 Japanese Americans. Several thousand German Latin Americans were kidnapped from their home countries and brought to the U.S. for internment as well. The U.S. State Department encouraged their home countries to arrest them, seize their assets, and deport them to the U.S. Upon arrival in the U.S., they were charged with illegally entering the U.S. also. That's a good trick. You force somebody to come and charge them with illegal entry. Brazil set up its own internment camps in which some 15,000 German Brazilian leaders were incarcerated for the duration of the war. Some of these people, their families had been in Brazil since 1815. After the Nazi attack on the Soviet Union, the entire ethnic German population of European Russia, millions of people, were deported in cattle cars to the Soviet Far East. Hundreds of thousands of these Germans died in the transports. This, although ethnic Germans were accounting themselves well in the defense of the Soviet Union. Indeed, one of the heroes of the defense of Brest was an ethnic German by the name of Wagner. To this day, and I want to stress that, till 2010, the descendants of these deported ethnic Germans have not received an apology for their treatment at the hands of Soviet authorities. To this day, they are forbidden from returning to their home regions, although all other ethnic so-called enemies of the state have long since been allowed to return to their homes. The bombing terror of German cities during the war took tremendous toll. I can't begin to give you an accurate figure of the dead, since it has been deliberately falsified and revised downward since the end of the war. One example should suffice: Dresden. Curiously, before Dresden was attacked, I believe it's a week before Dresden was attacked, Winston Churchill, kind of echoing the comment of Clemenceau, said, "There are 1 million Germans, still too many." February 1945, after the bombing over Valentine's Day, estimated that close to 250,000 people, mostly refugees from the East, had met their end there. And the estimation was based on counts of bodies and ashes and remains. Today, under American and British pressure, the city now claims that a figure of between 18,000 and 25,000 were killed there. Only 1/10 of what the German government actually counted in 1945. Kurt Vonnegut, one of my favorite authors, was a POW in Dresden and lived through the firestorm there. He spoke of hundreds of thousands of dead. As Soviet troops moved towards the west,